Hello, hello, and welcome back to Bearing Birth, a birth story podcast highlighting the emotional impact of birth, the immediate postpartum period, and the years beyond. I'm Sophie, a perinatal mental health therapist.
And I'm Jordan, a doula specializing in postpartum support. Today, we have an amazing episode with Abby. This episode will be part 1 with her, where Abby shares her birth story.
Mm-hmm. And Abby is a former doula client of yours, which was really exciting because it was the first client we've had on.
Yeah, I was so excited to have her on. Yes, she's a former client, and also we've just really connected so well. So we've actually spent some time together since working together, and she just was so awesome in explaining how she sort of came back to finding herself again after becoming a parent of 2. And I think it's going to be such a really good listen for the listeners to hear what works for her in sort of reclaiming her non-mom self.
Yeah. I think a lot of people will relate. A lot of parents who are maybe a couple years post-birth and they're still trying to figure out who they are now that most of their day is taken up by a lot of these tasks. Mm-hmm. I feel that way, parenting tasks. Mm-hmm. And so I think Abby had a really thoughtful way of putting words to that experience.
Yeah, I agree.
And this was the first guest that we had on that I had no idea really who they were. I had no prior story about them. And so it's really cool to be so curious from the beginning, to have no idea where the story is going to go.
Yeah, just sit down.
Yeah.
Have some tea and hear a story. And I mean, it always amazes me how, no matter which way a story goes, it's just so special. And it was just a good reminder that birth is amazing no matter what. And I just get excited every time we sit down to talk with someone.
Me too. Do you want to share the worry that Abby had where she said, I'm not sure my story will be interesting?
Yeah. When I asked her to come on, she was like, I don't know if my birth stories are interesting enough. And my immediate response was what? All birth stories are interesting. Yeah. But I think just get reminded of that over and over when doing this podcast.
What was interesting is how she tells her story and what comes up for her. We sat for 2 hours and so much came up. Yeah. Thank you so much, Abby, for coming on, and we really hope you enjoy this episode.
Enjoy.
A doula and a therapist are sitting down to talk about birth. A doula and a therapist are sitting down to talk about birth.
I'm excited to hear your story.
I'm excited too.
Thanks for coming on.
Yeah.
Have you heard the stories before?
No. I mean, cool. I heard how your birth with Matilda went.
Yeah.
From your very sleep deprived state in those first few days.
Yeah. I think we debriefed on it that first day home from the hospital, but that was a while ago.
I was there the first night that they came home from the hospital.
I think I remember that. Yeah. You were saying I have a new client and I'm there the first night with the baby is home.
She was so squishy and wrinkly.
She's so tiny.
Did you all connect before the birth of Matilda or?
Yes.
Yeah, she actually hired me through the birth collective, Wildwood.
Okay. Cool.
So we had a video interview, I think.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, we did.
So long ago now.
It was a year ago now,
yeah,
I think.
Wow.
Did you have a birth doula as well?
We did, also through Wildwood, but she ended up not doing that much. We can get into the the story. But.
Well, yeah, we can sort of help guide you. So there's no right or wrong way to tell your story. And I know you have 2 birth stories, so it's totally up to you if you want to start with the first one or start with the most recent one. A lot of people kind of jump back and forth and compare because that's just natural. They're both part of your life. And so whatever feels good. So whichever one you want to start with, you can sort of start with how your pregnancy was or what your fertility journey was like, if there was one.
Sure. Yeah. So we started trying to get pregnant at a really calm and chill time of May 2020. Really
very calm time.
Great time to get pregnant. But for whatever reason, it felt like the right time.
Well, you had a lot of time and probably to think about it.
Yeah. And we just kind of thought the pandemic wouldn't last that long. I'm a very optimistic person naturally. And I just was like, this is going to work out. It's going to be fine. And then I had a miscarriage with my first. So we got pregnant right away. And then it was missed miscarriage. So we went in for one of our appointments and the heartbeat wasn't there anymore. So that was tough during the pandemic.
Yeah, that's a lot all at once.
Yeah, it was tough. And then I had to go in and get a DNC to get all of that taken care of. And it was like early pandemic days. So like my husband couldn't go with me. And
oh, that's so hard.
yeah. And then we were planning to move from Minnesota to Portland. And we were going to live with my parents who live in Washington while we looked for a house. We thought I was going to be pregnant, but then I was not. And so we ended up moving into my parents when I was very sad. But it was really good to be with them. We watched a lot of like Great British Baking Show and like my mom bakes a lot. And so like it was a cozy place to be. But then like 6 months later, we started trying again and got pregnant with Harriet pretty quickly again. And it went really well. Like the pregnancy was good. I was very anxious throughout the whole thing because of the miscarriage. But
yeah, was there a time when it felt like, okay, I've been pregnant long enough, like I feel like I can lean into it more, or was it just the whole time?
no, I was so anxious the whole time.
No.
It was tough. I wish I could have enjoyed it more because like literally not a single thing went wrong the entire pregnancy. Like it was so easy. And
What did
she's
you
so
do
healthy.
with the anxious feelings to cope with them?
I don't think I handled it the best way that I could have. I did a lot of Googling and just like checking every symptom ever and going on all the forums and being like, is this normal? And
Yeah. Did you notice that heightened the anxiety when you would do that? Yeah.
I would definitely do the same thing, though. I feel like
I did. Doom scroll.
there's so much information.
Yeah.
yeah, and it was still like, pre-vaccine COVID era. So it was like I was in my house just like doom scrolling all the time.
Oh, gosh. Did you move into Portland while you were pregnant?
Yes. We got a house like, I think I was 3 months along when we moved in.
A lot of big changes.
Yeah, a ton of big changes. Yeah, but the pregnancy went really well. I got care through a birth center, which was great. The midwives were great. I loved that. We had a birth doula for that one too. And then, yeah, nothing went wrong at all the whole time. And then I went into labor. And I was still like, at that point is when I kind of stopped feeling as anxious, I think. I did prep for that quite a bit with the doula. And I just kind of like let it happen.
You made it to that point.
Yeah, and I mean, in hindsight, I don't know. There are so many things that to be potentially anxious about.
Do you think
the
having a
birth process
doula
too, but
helped ease the anxiety for the birth experience?
somewhat. I just have this feeling that like it was like as soon as labor started, that part of my brain just turned off. It was just like,
Focus.
there's nothing else that I can do about this. It's just going to happen the way that it's going to happen. And I have like other work to do.
Yeah.
So I just like my brain didn't go there anymore, which I'm really grateful for. I was worried that I would be very anxious. I talked to my doula about like, if I have a panic attack in the middle of labor, like what do we do?
Yeah.
We had a whole plan and I never did.
Well, maybe having the plan attributed to being able to put all that away, but I mean, we'll never know.
Yeah.
Do you have panic attacks?
Sometimes. Yeah. Not super often anymore, but every now and then.
Yeah, I imagine having all of these physical sensations to focus on got you out of, because anxiety is a future-oriented feeling. So the whole pregnancy, you're anticipating this event, and then now you're in it and trying to focus.
Yeah, that's a great point. Yeah, there's nothing more immediate and in the moment than being in labor.
Yeah. What was that like for you to experience labor? Was it like you expected or had heard about, or what was it like, the feeling?
It's different than I expected. I think it was described as well as you can describe it, I think, but I can't describe it any better than what I was told, but it was different. And I knew, I had Braxton Hicks contractions up a few times and I was like, oh, maybe I'm in labor now. And I Googled it a bunch of times. And then when I actually was, I was like, no, I definitely am, even though it was really early.
It was noticeably different.
Yeah, it felt really different. A lot more like something was really happening. But it was still like, it started, I think, like 11:30 at night, right as I was like trying to fall asleep. And I was just like, oh, that's interesting. I'm going to go to sleep now.
Were you able to sleep?
Yeah.
Oh, that's good.
Yeah, I slept until about 3 a.m. and then it got like more intense and I woke up my husband and I was like, all right, it's time for you to wake up with me because I'm not going to do this by myself anymore.
I'm glad you were able to get some sleep. I feel like it's so unfair to start right when you're about to go to sleep because then you're starting like with not rest.
Yeah.
So even getting a little bit of sleep probably worked in your favor, I would imagine.
Yeah, for sure. I felt like I got a decent amount, and then I woke up with like a ton of adrenaline. I was like, all right, this is happening. Here we go. But it was still like a fairly slow ramp up, I guess. Like they more intense, but we stayed at home for most of the day. And I just labored at home on my yoga mat for the most part. And then we called our doula. I think it was like around 11:30 in the morning when it started to get more like, we need another set of hands in this situation.
Yeah, if it's something you've never experienced before.
Mm-hmm. The contractions are just a lot at that point. Like, it just becomes like, I can't think. I can't tell you what to do or like how to help me. I just like need somebody to do something. Or And I really needed like ideas because I spent a lot of time just like I said, on my yoga mat. And then it reached a point where I was like, this is horrible, but I can't think of anything else to do to move myself. And so when my doula got there, she suggested that I like lean over the countertop in my kitchen and like sway back and forth. And that was really super helpful for me for a long time.
Yeah. At what point did you end up going to the birthing center, if that's what happened?
I did. It was a while. We called, my husband called when the contractions were, I think 8 or 9 minutes apart. And they said, okay, like, this is your first baby. This is going to be pretty slow. You've probably got a long time left. So call us back when they're like 4 or 5 minutes apart. And it was 45 minutes later and they were 3 minutes apart. Whoa. I was like, all of a sudden. And I was like, we need to go now. And then the doula said, yeah, we need to go now. And so we left.
Was it a long drive?
It was like 45 minutes.
Oh, wow.
It was the longest 45 minutes of my life. My husband was driving and I was sitting in the seat behind him, holding on to the headrest of the seat, screaming into the back of his head the entire time.
It must have been a journey for all of you.
It was a white knuckle hell ride, as he describes it.
I feel like every 3 minutes is a lot of contractions in 45 minutes.
So many. I just remember one time too where he's just like, it's okay, babe. We're almost there. Just 25 minutes left. And I almost lost my mind.
That is certainly not the definition of almost there in Portland.
No. And I was like, it feels like an eternity already. I can't do this. This baby's going to come in the car.
That's so hard.
Yeah.
Ugh. Did you find the contractions were more painful in the car, like in the position you were in, or was it pretty similar?
It was the same. It was just like right before I left the house, I told the doula, I was like, I feel like I need to push. And she's like, oh. And I could see in her face, like, maybe we should have left earlier. So I kind of feel like I was like subconsciously holding it in and like just trying not to give in to that urge.
Which makes a lot of sense when you're in the car.
It hurt a lot.
Oh, gosh.
But I was vomiting a lot when I was at the house, and I did not do that in the car. So
that's a win.
It was a win. Yeah.
That's interesting because you're at home, you're like, the earth isn't moving around you, but in the car, motion sickness.
Extreme focus.
Yeah.
You're holding it all in.
It was a lot. It was so intense. And it hurt quite a bit. When I described it to the midwife afterwards, she's like, I'm pretty sure you were in transition in the car. That sounds terrible.
Oh my gosh, that does sound terrible.
It was not my favorite part.
It's an example of how birth is not textbook, and it's never like, well, you probably have a really long time. Like, you can never be sure about that.
And it had gone pretty slow up to that, like it had taken a normal progression. And so
your body was just so ready.
As soon as I started standing at the counter and swaying side to side, it was just like, it kicked it up.
But at any point were you frustrated when you called initially and they said to wait? Do you feel like that was your intuition saying, maybe I should go?
No, at that point I wasn't, because it was like 8 or 9 minutes. But then, it was 30 minutes later and I was like, they're going faster now. Like, this is too fast. And I actually was the one who said, like, I think we need to call again, which really annoyed me at the time. I was like, I shouldn't be the one saying this.
Yeah.
But it was...
So you're the only one experiencing it to, like,
just
really tell the difference in that 30 minutes.
Yeah.
That I realized in hindsight that I like really wanted people to read my mind, and then obviously
Understandably.
So you're in the car for 45 minutes and you finally arrive to the birthing center.
they were waiting for us outside, which was wonderful, and we pulled up right up front. And I remember getting out of the car with no shoes on and walking through, and it was September, so it was very hot. And I'm just walking straight in, and they took me straight to the room, and they wanted to do a cervical check, and they did, and they were like, "Yep, you're fully dilated, baby's on the way." Like, let's push. And what I will never forget what the midwife said. She said, "Okay, you're in the right place. You can let the baby out now." And I just like still tear up when I say that to myself, because it was so, I really needed to hear that. I felt like I had been waiting to be in the right place for a really long time. Mm-hmm. But then,
that's a good midwife.
Yeah, she was amazing. And then I sat on the birthing stool and pushed for 30 minutes. Took a little longer at that point than I expected it to, but 30 minutes is not that long. But she came pretty fast in the end, and it was really fast and really surprising. And
what's
intense.
happening for you right now? Are you like in the moment remembering?
yeah, I just lost myself in the memory a little bit there.
Yeah. What feeling comes up for you when you are there?
Like peace and happiness. It's insanely painful, but that's not really the part that like comes to the top of mind.
Yeah. Yeah.
Just especially now, like she's 3 now, and she's so deeply herself, and connecting that to her first day on earth is pretty awesome.
Yeah. It's so much change in a little person.
Yeah. Yeah.
Did you like using the birthing stool?
I kind of wish that I had tried something else. I feel like it was working for a while, and then she was kind of slowing down. And I just remember the midwife doing a check and then saying that she needed some help, like getting past a bone or something. And she used her hand to help guide the baby past the bone, which is super painful. And it worked, but I kind of wish I tried a different position, because it seemed like maybe a different position would have worked better. But
What is a birthing stool? Is it like a toilet in a way, but a stool that you're sitting on that has an opening?
it is a stool that it's like a heart-shaped seat, kind of. So there's like a dip where the baby can come through. And I'm trying to remember if it had a back on it. I don't think it did, because my husband sat behind me and like held onto my shoulders the whole time. I think it's just a stool that's shaped like a heart, but I was not looking super carefully.
Yeah, no worries. No,
I know there's a variety of them.
Yeah.
I know some like tilt so that your pelvis can sort of like tilt open a little bit more. You're the first person on the podcast that used a birthing stool, so.
Oh,
yeah,
really?
I'm just curious, yeah.
Yeah, it went out. I mean, obviously it worked, but
Yeah.
like I had a lot of tearing. And the second time around with Matilda, I had all these plans of like, I talked to my doula a lot about wanting to try different positions. Like if she was slowing down, wanting to do something else and like let it go slower if it needed to. Because with Harriet, after she was they helped her move past that bone, and then they were checking the heart rate and they're saying, oh, it's slowing down a little bit, so I just want you to keep pushing. And so like I feel like I pushed more than I wanted to. Like obviously I wanted her to be safe, but
of course, yeah.
hopeful that there was a way to do it without tearing so much, and because the healing process was pretty intense from that.
Yeah, that sounds so hard.
But I didn't even notice it in the moment. It was just like it's
So
over,
many hormones and so much adrenaline,
and she was right there, and it was an awesome experience, because I just like picked her up, put her right in my arms, right on my chest. She was all gross and beautiful, and they didn't even wipe her off, and it was so wonderful. And then moved to the bed and did the placenta, and it was such a lovely place, because it was, it just felt like a home.
Yeah.
It was a nice bed, and we just got to like hang out there together after everything was done.
What was it like moving with your baby to the bed?
It was like two feet behind me, so it was not far. And from what I remember, I think Charlie my husband kind of supported me through the transition, and I just kind of like shuffled across.
Yeah.
That's how I remember it.
Yeah, I was thinking about that when you mentioned like wanting to try different positions in the pushing phase, because I hear that it can be like almost impossible to feel like you can move when the baby's like there, because it's just like, how do you
Like
navigate
your pelvis
this?
so deep.
Yeah, but I know that some doulas can like help you try.
Yeah, that's a good point. It mentally felt really impossible to me at that moment too.
Yeah. I feel like you have to have permission from someone to even understand, like, if you can, and help, obviously.
Yeah, for sure.
So then you're laying in bed and then the placenta is delivered. Yeah, and then what happens?
And then they just left and came back like 45 minutes later, and we just got to hang out and
Yeah.
be with our baby.
That must have been such an opposite feeling to the anxiety you had throughout the pregnancy to see your baby there, Harriet.
Yeah, and she was perfectly healthy and cried right away, latched within an hour, did a great job.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Do you feel like
I was so relaxed and so happy?
Oh.
And I got to take a shower. It was wonderful.
that's so nice? Do you feel like being left alone for a while helped you all like integrate this experience a little bit?
Yeah, definitely.
So special.
It was very cool. And they, that birth center ordered you food from a local restaurant right after you gave birth. So within like 2 hours of giving birth, I was eating a pulled pork sandwich, and I was so happy.
It's amazing. Do you get to pick the place?
Yeah.
Like ahead of time?
Yeah, and then I got to order whatever felt good in the moment. It was great.
Oh, amazing.
It was awesome.
Everyone deserves that.
Yeah.
You ate a burger?
Burger. Yeah.
You need
from
something
PDX
like that.
Sliders. Yeah. It just nourishes your whole soul and being afterwards.
I know, they gave me a smoothie too, which was also good, but not the same as a pulled pork
Yeah.
sandwich.
You need the iron, probably.
Just a comfort food. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah. Anything more that you want to say about the birth?
I guess the only thing is that it all felt really kind of out of my hands and out of my control in the moment. It was just like, this is what's happening. And I think that's why I didn't like advocate for trying a different position or like not having the hands-on like maneuvering of the baby. And in hindsight, I did feel a little bit bad about that. Like because I had tried really hard to prepare myself to advocate for myself. And then, like 3 days later when I was thinking about it, I was like, see, that was the moment right there. It was where like I had prepared for that and I didn't do it. So I had a little bit of regrets about that, but
It's such an intense experience. It's like you're not in like your logical part of your brain. So it's like you can't convince yourself to pay attention to something like decision making unless someone's like there saying,
Yeah.
hey, you have a decision right now. So it's understandable to just like get through it, like sort of like stay inward and like get through what's happening instead of being like, oh, right now I need to be advocating, it's so hard.
What do you think would have changed if you were able to advocate for yourself and maybe to go slower or...
I think the only real motivation is like, I wish that I had tried a different position to potentially minimize the tearing because it felt like that wasn't necessarily necessary, but I don't know. Maybe it would have been the same. So
It's hard to know.
Yeah.
I do feel now like I'm okay with it.
Yeah.
I'm okay with the way it went.
Did you need a lot of stitches and were those done shortly after the birth or did you have to get those done later on?
No, that's a good question. It was right after the placenta was delivered.
What was that like for you?
I don't really remember it being a big deal. I was just laying in the bed and baby was laying on my chest and I was just staring at her and like they didn't use anesthesia or anything, but I was just like, yeah, that kind of hurt a little bit, but nothing compared to the rest of what just happened. So
Yeah, I bet they don't have to for most people in that specific moment.
yeah, it was over pretty quickly. And then the healing was irritating and frustrating and it took a long time and that was uncomfortable. But, after I've come down from the high of it,
Back at home.
it was less
recovering.
fun. But
Yeah. How do you heal from a lot of tearing? Like, what do they recommend doing?
I was recommended to not really walk around too much for the first week and then just take it slow from there.
Being mindful of movement, because I've heard you can re-tear if you move a lot afterwards.
Yeah, I was worried about that. I didn't, and I actually, the anxiety and the paranoia definitely came back after. And I had a little bit of postpartum anxiety, I would say, undiagnosed because it wasn't bad enough that I felt like I needed to go in. But in hindsight, I wish that I would have. But yeah, so I called and got checked multiple times thinking that potentially it had retorn and it never had. It was always fine. But
Just painful.
yeah, just normal painful though. And the little ends of the strings kind of poke you. And so you I didn't know. I can't see,
Yeah.
so I don't know if that's supposed to be happening.
You're not sitting there with a mirror.
It's all internal, so there's like nothing I can see, even if I tried.
Internal.
Yeah.
Interesting.
She has a really big head. She came really, I know that's supposed to be fine and normal, but it was a tough one.
I feel like it's an example of like, no matter how good the providers are, it's like your intuition is so important, like paying attention to like what, not to say like, oh, you should have paid attention to your intuition. Like, I'm not saying that at all, but like, there's no way for like even the best midwife to understand like what you're experiencing in your body and like what feels right. And if you've never done it before, it's so impossible to know like, is what I'm feeling, which is different from what I'm being told, like, can I follow that intuition? Because I've never done this before.
Especially with experts in the room.
Right, yeah.
And with the words heart rate dropping, like,
Yeah,
I mean,
there's fear there
it's
too.
so hard to, and I know that happens a lot during labor, from which I learned later, that heart rates ebb and flow, like especially
being squeezed.
during a contraction,
Yeah.
like they're getting squeezed, like things, so.
Almost nobody, I feel like, will be like, it's fine that my baby's heart rate's dropping. I'm going to do this different thing instead.
Yeah, it goes against your instinct of wanting to protect them.
Yeah.
Yeah, let's just keep doing this thing that's hurting them. That's like a great idea.
How long did you stay at the birth center?
Oh my gosh, that's the thing about the birth center is it was less than 24 hours. We got there at 4 o'clock, I think, and she was born at almost at 5 o'clock, and we left at, I want to say, 7 the next morning.
Whoa,
Wow,
that's so fast.
Yeah.
It was very fast.
Did you feel prepared to be sent off to on your own at that point?
I was excited to be in my own bed. I don't know. I mean, they come in and do checks like every hour, so you don't get much sleep there. And I just figured maybe we'll get more sleep at home, and that wasn't necessarily true. But I felt ready as you could be.
Yeah. Was it nice once you got home?
Yes, my parents and my sister and my niece were all there, and my niece was 2.5 at the time, and she was so excited.
Oh.
She'd been talking to my daughter while I was pregnant for like the whole pregnancy, so she was very excited.
It's like a living doll.
Yeah.
What more could you want?
She's still like that with my oldest. It's really sweet.
They're 5.5 and 3 now together. Yeah, they're probably really good friends.
They are. They have a tough time sometimes playing together, but they're getting better now. They're starting to be able to play the same types of things now. And my daughter likes to draw pictures and then dictate letters to me to send to her cousin.
Oh, that's so
sweet.
nice.
We do a lot.
Cousins are the best.
So then you were home and in your own environment with family who held you. Is there anything about your the first postpartum experience that was noteworthy?
I think just the anxiety. It was still pretty bad at that point.
What were you anxious about?
Just bad things happening to her. I know a certain amount of like waking up in the night and making sure they're still breathing is normal. And most people do that. But I feel like I did it a lot, like to the point where I was not sleeping well at all. And just a lot of fear that bad things were going to happen to her.
Yeah, that's so hard. It is normal to feel that anxiety. And also when it's getting in the way of your functioning to like sleep, it just compounds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It did. I mean, like I said, I didn't get help for it. I wish that I had talked to somebody about it, but a few months, within a few months, it started to get better and really went away. And my second pregnancy was much less anxious. I felt like it was just easier knowing that like everything had gone really well the first time. Like
You had this evidence.
I can do this. I can have a baby.
I literally did it.
Yes, this is gonna be okay. And if it's not, we can try again. Because with the first time, after that first miscarriage, I'm tend towards the dramatic a little bit. But I did think, what if I just can never, ever have a baby, after that miscarriage? Because I will be so sad. And what if I waited too long because, I'm an older parent? And
I don't think that's dramatic. I think it makes a lot of sense.
thank you. In hindsight, it was not grounded in reality. But I was really worried about that. But the second time around, I really wasn't. I was like, this is going to be
good.
okay. Yeah.
Before we talk about your second pregnancy, did you have a postpartum doula the first time, or did you have help from family?
We had help from family. My mom stayed with us for 2 weeks. And by the end of that, we felt like we're ready to do this on our own. We know what we're doing and we can handle it. I wish that I had had a postpartum doula now that I know how great they are, but at the time I did not. And I just thought like, I can do this. This will be fine.
Yeah.
And we did.
And you did.
We did.
Yeah.
No, mostly just family, but family's great.
That's nice.
Yeah.
Yeah, family also comes with their own stuff too. With a doula, it's a little different because with family, I've heard from people who have had family and people who have come on that it adds a layer of like you don't want to ask them for certain types of support because it's a familial relationship and they might know a way better or something than you do. And so it's hard. There's like these barriers to asking for the help that you need. But I feel like with a doula, it can be different.
Yeah, I think so. That's a really good point.
Yeah, I think, and there's just baggage there sometimes. It's different for everyone though.
Yeah.
Some people feel like completely comfortable with their mom, for example, being in their house for 2 weeks. And some people are like, okay, that was 13 days too long.
Yeah.
The actual like staying in the house thing is a little bit more complicated. Like our house is fairly small and, you know, it's just more dishes and she was in more people and more bodies. And it's just, we were ready to be done with it.
Yeah. And you can't really be like, okay, take the baby while I sleep overnight. I mean, I guess some family members might do that, but most of the time I feel like that's not happening.
No, that was not on the table. Understandably, but not on the table.
Were you working at the time or did you take some time off?
I took 4 months off. Yeah, I work from home. I had a different job back then, but it was also from home. And I took 4 months off with my daughter.
How was that for you? To have this first time, I imagine maybe, of not working. Working in a very different way, right?
Yeah. It was delightful. I loved it very much. I did not love my job that I had back then. So it was awesome. I mean, it was hard. You know, it is work to be a new parent, but a parent at all. But it was awesome. I loved it.
Yeah.
And just like the single focus, you know, I don't have to be working on other things at the same time. My brain is just concerned about this one person and our relationship, and that's it.
Yeah.
It's really one of the only times in life that you get that. Like you're forced to have single focus. Like
that was
all
really
can
hard
use
for
that.
me, that period.
Was it?
Yeah.
Really?
That's why I asked, I think, just because I'm curious what other people's experiences going from doing a bunch of projects and work and keeping myself occupied to suddenly just having that one focus of a big one, keeping a human alive. But they sleep a lot and
It can be boring.
it can be boring. And I was kind of getting anxious of what do I do? Like, what does it mean to be productive now?
Yeah.
And it's interesting for something to be both hard and boring.
Yeah.
Like you're tired and you're bored.
Yeah.
Like it's not necessarily like, oh, I'm just bored. It's just like it's not stimulating in the same way that like having other tasks is.
Yeah. Or it doesn't affirm these parts of your identity that you've had or you were used to or I
While
was
your
used to.
identity is literally shifting.
Yeah, it's so complex.
Yeah, that's a great point. I wonder if maybe that's why I felt it was like productive anxiety that I had too. It was just like I was trying to find something to fix maybe because I
Because you weren't working on
needed
fixing
something
anything.
to do with my brain.
Yeah.
Maybe.
Our brains are literally doing like multiple things at once almost all the time in this society now.
Yeah, and it is wonderful to stare at your newborn baby, but yeah, they nap a lot. But I loved it. I read a lot. I slept a lot. It was great.
Yeah, good.
Went for walks once I could.
Did you feel like your identity shifted becoming a mom for the first time?
Yeah, definitely. I think I'm still figuring that out.
Makes sense.
Amen.
Yeah. I sort of feel like in the last 6 months, I've kind of found a marriage between who I was before and who I am now. I think I overcorrected for a couple of years maybe and like leaned into I'm a mom now mode where I like kind of lost some of the parts of my former self. And since my youngest was born, I've been trying to find my way back to that person. So that's been good, but it is ongoing.
How do you do that in practice? Tell me what that
No
looks
pressure.
like for you.
It's time, like just carving out time for myself. So what that looks like is that I don't sleep very much. I realized that the thing that was missing from my life was reading and writing, which is something that I'd done a lot of before, but hadn't done much of in the last few years. And so I was reading a lot actually after Matilda was born. And then as she, stopped needing to be on me quite so much, I would just like carve out some time to write and read. And now that they're bigger, I get up at 5 every day to read and write for 2 hours before the kids get up, and then go to work, and then do kid stuff all evening, and then do like another hour before bed. But it's mostly just like sleeping less.
Yeah.
Which is not
But
great
it's
either.
like nourishing in a different way.
Yeah.
I used to do that when I didn't work nights. I used to wake up at like 5:30 because I would work at like 9, and then I'd be gone 10, 11 hours. And then I get home, and then it'd be like, okay, eat dinner, go to bed. And I'm not even having kids, which is very different, I recognize. But like, it just felt like if I didn't do that, like wake up to like have time that was like quiet. And for me, it just felt like, what am I doing? I'm just going to work. That's it,
Yeah.
And I feel like, so I resonate with that a lot. And I don't do it anymore because I work nights mostly, but I feel like I kind of get that at work in some ways, which I guess saying that out loud, it's like, that's probably not good enough. I don't feel like I'm missing that though. I feel like back then, if I didn't do that, I was just like, I have to have time to myself or I'm not going to function.
Kids or no kids, it's still on the theme of reclaiming your time and like what you want to do. That gives you purpose.
And not spending your time doing something for like others only.
Caretaking.
Or just like cleaning or grocery shopping during your spare time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
To be fair, though, a huge part of that, though, is that my husband is a stay-at-home parent now as of 4 months ago. So that has taken a lot of the pressure off of me. He does all the grocery shopping and he cooks dinner every night. And like that has given me time.
That's huge.
Yeah, that's huge. Yeah.
That's awesome.
Helped a lot. It's very difficult to do if both parents are working because you're just like
Totally tapped out.
There's just not enough time, literally.
something always needs to be done.
Was it easy for you to set your alarm and get up at 5?
I started with it being at 6, and that was really easy. I was really excited to have time to myself. It is really difficult for me to wake up to a child yelling for me, even if they're not upset, even if it's like a happy yell. My 3-year-old goes, "Mommy, it's morning time."
Yeah, I know the feeling. Mine is like, "Mama, out, out."
It's like fingernails on a chalkboard. If it drags me out of a sleep, I'm just like, oh, it's awful.
You don't get to like choose to wake up.
Yeah.
So if I can like have some coffee, do some yoga, read for an hour, do a little writing, then I'm like, I'm ready. So I'm very excited when I'm very tired, but I'm also excited to get up and like have that time. But now I do 5 because I started doing yoga also and exercising, and I'm just like.
Have you noticed a pretty big shift in how you show up for others and yourself?
Yeah, I think so. I feel like I have a lot more to give, and I feel like there was like a sort of frantic energy about my life before, which was just like, something is missing. I don't have time for it. I'm always trying to find it. I'm never getting it, and I'm constantly disappointed. It's like just
No,
I feel this way.
I think
Thank you
so
for
many
putting this to
people.
words.
Sorry,
Yeah.
I interrupted you. I think so many people feel this way all the time.
It's really hard.
Yeah, I really, really appreciate this wisdom that you're giving here.
Yeah, I think this is so huge, I think, to talk about. And it can feel impossible for a lot of people to find that. So I don't think it's dramatic at all, the way that you described it. I think I resonate with that, I'm sure.
Yeah. It's so hard for me to get up that early, but I resonate with this feeling of I'm in this frenzy state and there's something missing, but I can't quite grasp what it is. But there's something there. And I've wanted to get up early, but it's really hard to do that when you have a child who notices when you get up.
Oh,
We sleep together.
Yeah, that's harder.
And so maybe someday.
Well, it's just like unfair for life to just be like 100 tasks between waking up and going to sleep, and then that's it. That's life.
Yeah.
Like, and that's sort of necessary a lot of the time for so many people. Like, you have kids, you have to have a job, like you have to work. Some people have to have multiple jobs, and that's just like the reality. And it's so hard to just like stop and be like, ugh, like life is just like flying by with task after task. So I feel like as hard as it can be to find that time, it's so huge. And so it's nice to hear that like that's working for you.
It really is. I feel like too, one of the big shifts for me was when I realized that like I was staying up later at night so that I could feel like I was having time to myself. But at night I was so tired that all I was doing was watching TV.
Yep.
And so I was just like, I'm going to like, it's like a daylight savings time situation. I'm just going to like take that time away and put it on the other end of the night instead and see if I can use it better. And that just really worked for me. So I go to bed a little bit earlier, not like super early.
Yeah. So you've noticed yoga or exercise, reading, writing, and this 2-hour chunk of time helps you connect with yourself and find yourself again.
And I'm just like a better mom. I feel like I'm just more present. And I don't know that I was like actively resentful, but it feels like it was like pre-resentful of like, I don't want to just not be me for the next 18 years. I don't want to put all of my needs second for the next 18, 20 years. A lot of them, sure, like that's fine. But like I have to like put myself first in a couple of things and find a way to do that without feeling like I'm not doing my best as a parent.
Yeah.
And it helps me to feel that way. And I just feel like it helps me to show up for my kids better.
Yeah, I'm going to challenge myself to follow Abby's routine.
Keep me posted. I
Yeah.
want to know how it goes. It's rough. You can text me at 5 a.m.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, an accountability buddy.
Oh,
That
yeah.
would be cool.
A
Yeah.
picture of your like
coffee,
tea.
Yeah.
Yeah. Just like grumpy face.
Yeah.
It's fine too.
If you can sneak away.
But the grumpy face is a lot different than the grumpy face of out. I'm out. Right?
It's not the nails on the chalkboard. Yeah. I think that more parents should put themselves first in some of the 1,000 things that you're making that decision about. I think, like, of course, you're giving your everything to your kids. Like, I think that's such a normal way to feel like, oh, this is what my life is now. But like you said, you're able to show up better if you put yourself first in the small ways, even big. I don't even think it's a small way. I think it's a big way.
It feels big. It's very impactful for sure.
Even though you don't get as much sleep, but
It's fine.
if you feel good, then great.
It's fine. Yeah, just keep telling myself
What
that.
is sleep?
I'm curious, and totally up to you if we have this in the podcast, but because you're able to start writing, is that how you're able to write a book?
Whoa. You wrote a book?
It's in progress. But
Okay.
It's the first draft is done and I'm revising now. But yes, I started when I had one kid, which in hindsight feels like I had a lot more time than than I realized I did. But the bulk of it has been since Matilda was born and since I started getting up early.
What's it about?
It's historical fiction about a pigment maker in ancient Greece.
Cool.
Whoa, awesome. I realized I never asked you about it. I took some author photos for her.
So cool. So that's what you're thinking about at 5 a.m., right? Like,
Yeah, just like
in this whole other
researching
world.
weird dyes. And, like,
Wow, I love that.
yeah, it's really fun.
Are you an author? Is that your work, or is this your passion and hobby?
I would love to be a published author someday. Right now, it's just a hobby, but
Good for you. Yeah. Goals.
I think part of it was just having kids too, right? Like I realized like I'm 38. That took me a minute to remember, which is fine. That's still young, but I have so little time now. And I look back and I realize like I had all this time before and I didn't do this thing that I really wanted to do. Like I've always wanted to be an author. I've always wanted to write books and I didn't do it then. And if I don't do it now, like another 20 years is going to pass and then who knows what's going to happen before I have like any more time. So I just felt like I just need to do it now or it's never going to happen. And I am not going to be able to be happy with the person that I am if I'm not going after something that I've known I wanted my whole life.
Yeah. Like taking initiative now before it's too late.
So having no time made me realize that like now I have to take the time.
And even like working towards a goal, very little bits, you'll get to that goal and that's cool. It feels, even if it feels slow.
Yeah. Like one sentence a day is still more than.
Yeah. You'll end up with a book.
Yeah, eventually. time goes on one way or another if you do the thing or not. So
Yeah. That's so cool.
it's also very fun. I just get to wake up early and like make shit up. It's awesome.
Yeah. And your imagination is probably really active and fresh as opposed to, like you were saying, at nighttime, you're just so drained and tired and you just want to vegetate
Yes.
and like consume things that might not be the best for you. Yeah. So cool. And this is where we conclude part 1. Stay tuned for part 2 of Abby's birth story coming out in 2 weeks. Bearing Birth is available on all major podcast streaming services. We invite you to subscribe as well as follow us on Instagram at Bearing Birth Podcast.